Welcome to Deges and Dragons.
I thought this was going to be hard.
Welcome to Deges and Dragons.
Who wants some of the Ripper?
They're state champs, baby. Woo!
Smoke heroes!
He's clearly Captain Crunch. I'm a man of the people.
Shattered world.
Ripper knows! Ripper always knows!
It's here. It is here. Deges and Dragons Season 2 has officially debuted. And you know what that means? That means that I can once again say, welcome to another episode of the Degecast, the supplemental podcast for our YouTube show, Deges and Dragons, where we take a therapeutic look at tabletop role-playing games. I'm your host, Nate Lindberg, and you can follow me on Twitter at Nate Lindberg, and you can follow our brand at Degetime. Now, we've started our therapeutic look at the hilariously amazing game called Retrostar, a game that allows you to create your very own 70s or 80s sci-fi show. Now, as you saw, the creator himself, Barak Blackburn, was gracious enough to be the game's showrunner for us, which allowed Conrad to actually even step into a player role for once. Now, this interview is a little bit less structured than normal. I walked away from the Zoom meeting after we finished recording the very last episode of our Retrostar gameplay, and when I returned, Conrad, Barak, and Tony were already in the middle of a great conversation about the game, so rather than stop the flow and, quote, start the interview, I just hit the record button. Now, without further ado, we're going to hop on over to our chat with the creator of Retrostar Games, and he's actually a board member for one of our great friends, the Bodana Group, a non-profit organization who promotes, teaches, endorses, researches, and anything else that you can consider or even think about with therapeutic gaming. Barak Blackburn.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because there's, I can hear all of you guys fine, but the video isn't moving. Can you guys see my hands moving?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to assume it's normal then.
Okay, cool. The way character creation works, where it's like there's the showrunner who's writing a character for their show, and then the player gets to add these attributes to the actor that then fills that role. And I thought that was just so cool, because it's I've done plenty in the past where I've strictly written a character for somebody, done it cooperatively, or they just write it themselves, and it was just such an interesting approach and way to do it. And it's great where you have a story in mind and you want to still have the players have the agency to come up with whatever characters they want. But then that can be difficult sometimes, where it's I have all of these plot points that won't make any sense if they go this route.
Yeah. Well, it's meant to be. So there's this idea that and one of the games I wrote deals with this, but this idea you can have a 50-page backstory, and that's great, but that's a lot. You're playing the game. The game should be the thing. And this, you sort of just get a rough overview of the character. And, imagine you were, directing Hamlet, and you got some guy you thought would be a great Hamlet, and he came in and he made all these weird choices. And you were like, okay, cool. And it's sort of that idea that here's this, and you have to stick to this, but feel free to do what you want over here. And I've had discussions with people about, so I love superheroes. I love superhero games. I wrote a superhero game. If you guys ever want to play, let me know and you can see how it works. But I found that a lot of people really like to play their favorite character. So I hand them, here's Superman for you to play. Here's this and that. And but then I like the idea. And I think if you approach things like acting or whatever, everyone wants to play Hamlet or everyone wants to play a certain character. And it's one thing to make your own character, but also it's fun to be oh, this character I love is mine now. I can do what I want with them. So, it's that idea that it's yours. Take it, do what you want. Interpret this however you like. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just another really cool part of the game that we didn't touch on right at the end there that I thought was super cool.
Yeah, well, good. And like I said, I really appreciate you guys wanting to do this setting, because it's one of the settings I really like, because as I close my eyes, I can really see it as a weird 70s TV show that's on reruns on the Sci-Fi Channel. But it's this weird 70s downbeat all the time, and then we fight a little, but it's all about sort of the family going through their stuff. So
yeah,
it's great, and it's so easy to continue on. We could so easily just same characters, go to the next episode.
Yeah.
And definitely. Episode 2.
Yeah, you play clean, and you're just let's start again, let's do it, and see where it goes. So.
Right. Yeah. Whether or not we just stay in the town and there's something else going on, or somewhere new, it is interesting.
I actually thought about it. If this was a normal thing, the last shot would have been the next day Dave like driving past and Davey like mournfully looking at Sandy's house, knowing that she was just a little blip in his life, you know. So, you know, because he always go on to the next town. That was part of the premise of the series, that it's a family that can't lay down roots. All they have is each other. So I put way too much time and effort into it.
No, that's great. It's like I always prepare everything the same way, where it's like we did Ghost Ops and I literally made 100 NPC and they encountered like, what did I end up saying?
Like 20 of them? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like Conrad prep for game prep for sure.
Definitely.
Well, so one of the things, and sort of big picture wise, one of the things that it does nicely is that you don't have, so when you sit down to play D&D and someone says we're doing a sandbox game, and then you have that one player who decides they want to go off the rails and do something different, like what do? You haven't prepped any encounters over there. There's work that has to be done. This is meant to truly be like, great, let's play. Everyone got your characters, let's go. You know what I mean? And we can go because I don't need to do any work. I don't need to prep villains or this or that. It's just, we didn't get into it. There are times where you can have certain encounters, like have an obstacle to them, like the big bad might be like, oh, it's a 5-die, obstacle to you. It's hard to take down the big bad, no matter what you're doing. And, but it's that idea that like, you don't need to spend all this time prepping encounters. I mean, like tactically they're going to do this and this and this, which I find is nice. You do all your work on the back end and then you're ready to run. Like if you guys were playing, let's play next Saturday, I could be like, great. I can come up with some plot points I wanted to do, the basic idea of what the thrust of the episode is, but that's it. Like, I don't need to be like, let me plot out every NPC and figure out what they're about. So yeah, that was an intentional choice as a designer to sort of make it like super prep light once you've done the sort of the background work. So
yeah, and I think that makes it like probably the easiest one to dive into of season 2. So like thinking about like all of the games, which is great because like we want that range, and I could easily see all age groups pretty much like being able to grasp this. It's like, especially if you just have that
solid for like any setting too. So you don't. Yeah. It's not like a specific narrative like some role playing games tend to have. It's like, no, this role playing game takes place here during this time, which is great, but it's also great to have a system that's very, just lets you run wild. This, can be, a space opera, kind of setting. It could be, a dark fantasy setting. It, obviously 70s sitcom setting. There's just so much you could potentially do with it, which is, great.
So I don't know if you all have read all the sample sort of series we use, but one of them is like A Little House on the Prairie in space. Very intentionally meant to be like Little House on the Prairie, like, sort of like hokey and whatever. But there are some weird sci-fi elements, just like there were with this, but it's definitely meant to be like, weird frontiers people living it out. So, yeah.
I like it.
Some more insight to your relationship with the Bahana group and what you kind of,
Sure. So Jack Birkenstock, the founder of the Bodhana Group, he was a big fan of various games by Spectrum, and so as things happen, you develop a sort of friendship, even though it's distanced. And I went down to their convention one year that they had, and I love the idea of like therapeutic gaming. Like I'm not a therapist myself, but I'm like, that's so awesome. Do you know what I mean? That you can sort of engage kids in this way, and it doesn't need to even be gaming for therapy. It could just be gaming for kids, you know what I mean? And kids who might want a new means of expression. And I really liked what they did. And then, I was looking through their website, not just, but just sort of like, learning more about it. They were like, apply to be on the board. And I asked Jack, and I was like, Jack, what's this process like? And he's like, well, the process is you send an email and then we will chat about you and then you will join the board, because I don't see any reason why they wouldn't pick you to be on the board. And so, I mean, we have monthly meetings and other stuff. And so I'm helping out in my role as an educator, a presenter, some tech stuff on the back end, which I deal tech stuff for my school, so I'm able to help with that. And I have a decent understanding of nonprofits and fundraising as well. And I've done convention organization, so I'm able to help there. So, the board is made up of different people from different walks of life. Many of them are therapists or therapist adjacent. I am not, but I can view into that world and I can say, hey, what about this? And some of the things, some things I'm totally out of my wheelhouse. Other things I'm like, oh, that's easy to do. Let me set that up for you. Like, oh, okay, cool. So it's just sort of bringing a different skill set to the party, if you will. So I really like it. We had our first virtual convention this year, which was a big success. I know, obviously this is going to air later, but today there is a convention where they are presenting multiple panels on therapy and gaming today virtually. So I think that the virtual has been a big boon for Bodhana. I know they're going to continue to try and do in person, as we all would like to be in person, but there's what has been disasters for some types of organizations seems to be a boon. Obviously, the convention didn't make as much money, but the reach of it expanded significantly because it's not in the middle of central Pennsylvania. Go Pennsylvania, by the way. But, it's not like people are like, I live in Western Canada. I can't really get there. I can get there. I can just show up and do this thing. So where we had, X number last year, we increased that by, I think, over 50% of the number of therapists who showed up to do some of the trainings.
Oh, wow.
And Jack has been certified to do like distance trainings and stuff like this. So, it's all coming together, and it's the big snowball getting bigger and bigger exponentially. So it's all good like that. So I'm super proud to be part of it.
That's great to hear, because I was actually kind of wondering about that, like how Save would have kind of gone off this year as opposed to prior years. Because like I know there's a couple people I talked to that they did the virtual Gen Con. They've done a couple other virtual cons, and they were underwhelmed. It didn't seem like it was a whole big group of people as they were expecting, and so I'm glad to hear that it was a success for you guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, we were able to have I did panels with game designers who live in California, who live here. That normally they would have had to pay to fly them in, and instead they asked and said, we're doing this thing, and said, yeah, I'd love to be part of that. So in that sense, it was great, and I'd love to sort of keep that momentum and do stuff. The in-person gaming, of course, is great as well, and don't get me wrong, but I like that we were able to sort of increase our reach as opposed to trying to hold on to just a fraction of it as we try and stay alive. So
no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, we were able to participate and Save, and do a couple games, ourselves, and I mean, we were planning on, at least Tony and I, at the very least, were planning on driving down this year.
Yeah.
If Conrad was able to, the three of us would have been there. But it was cool to be able to kind of interact with a lot of people, like just from all over the place.
Yeah, I know some people that are like adjacent to Bodhana that have gone for years, and our friends in the Bodhana group and everyone knows. Would show up in different panels and games and just like say hi to people, just like at a convention. Like there's people who just like, hey everyone, how you doing? You having fun? And there were people who did that virtually, like went to every Zoom and was like, hey guys, what's happening? And they'd be like, hey, what's up? It's like, I'm just here to say hi. I hope you're having a good time. So I like that people brought that level of weirdness to it too, because that's like what a convention is, just sort of like weird happening. So it makes it fun.
It's a nice communal feeling.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll be in person. I do know we are doing something this winter, early spring, virtually as well. And obviously the hope is that we'll go, we'll be in flesh space in the fall, but I think we'll also still have a virtual component to that as well. But obviously playing games is a lot of fun in person too. So
yeah, no, I gotta say I certainly miss sitting around a table with these guys.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, people are podding and you can play games with your pod, so you have people like playing family games and stuff like this. And you're like, well, I'm with this person, so I can do it. And, even if you live just one town over, you're like, it's just not a good idea, and it's a bummer. I think we all miss it. So, but stuff like this is great too. And it's a different way to sort of engage. And I played a game at Virtual Gen Con, and the guy was like, well, I'm going to roll all the dice. Okay, sure, whatever. And me personally, I'm like, I don't care. If you lie and tell me all your dice are sixes with every roll, I'm never going to call you out. I don't care. Game doesn't break. Let's have fun. Do you know what I mean? And, if you're that concerned with rules, and I've played games where people set up the tactical screen and this and that, there's nothing wrong with those games. But I also feel like, something that you don't have to engage with a lot of technology with, where you can sort of get immersed and just like sit back and relax. Because a game should kind of be like that. Like, you can be engaged in it, but it should be like, I'm just going to sit and have fun. I'm not going to be like, wait, what am I looking at? What's this, where, what, how's this spell going to work virtually? What do I have to do? Just have fun, go out and do your thing. So
yeah,
that's the fun of in person, that we can do that. So
and then, I mean,
if you do go next year, we'll make sure to stay in touch. And if you need help for places to stay or this or that, let me know. And I know they're moving. It's moving. It used to be at a mall. As you know, malls are pretty dead. So it was in a dead space at a mall that was huge, had some sketchiness to it. So they're moving to like a country club for next year. So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
now, I mean, one of the benefits, I guess, too, of the virtual stuff is like, when we were doing this all in person, we wanted to have a couple people play that, didn't live around here. Like one of the first games that we played was a game called Shattered. And we got and that's it's like a post-apocalyptic, like really kind of scary type of a game. It was a lot of fun. And, but we got really close with the developers, and like, we really wanted to have them, like at least one of them have either play it or run it or something. But we're like, short of flying them out here, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to like have us in person and them.
Yeah, like have us in person and them in you have them virtual. Like, how am I going to edit all that together? So at least this is kind of giving us a way to like allow somebody like yourself to come in and work with us and kind of like expand that. So that's definitely been a little bit of a silver lining in this whole thing.
Yeah, and video conferencing has made it so it's super easy now to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you Zoom and you're like record. It's like that's everyone. You don't have to be like, and with this I have to do this. And I used to do a podcast with friends, and we did it on. It was very complicated to get it done with like recording both the audio and you'd have to sync it together and this and that. And now you're like, click. I got the video done. Like
when we're recording in person, I have 2 cameras, I have 5 microphones, and I've got to sync everything together, and it takes forever. Now we like doing the Zoom stuff. It's like boom, hit record, and then editing all the episodes together is like a breeze comparatively.
Absolutely, yeah. That's great.
Yeah, by far. So.
And you'll have to try some regional foods down there, which is basically blah blah. Or sheets. You have to. Pennsylvania is very sort of people are divided. It's like if half the people liked Dunkin' Donuts and half the people like Krispy Kreme donuts, you'd have a fight there. So, but they're very passionate about their gas station sandwiches. Which is no insult. You talk to anyone from Pennsylvania, like they're good. They're fine. They're good. You pick what you want on them, and they're good to go. So.
Hey, I'm all about food.
Yeah, I'm like I said, whenever I travel, I always look for like interesting things to try and sort of like what are people eating there. So I'm glad I never traveled to Massachusetts because you'd be like, well, get Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
some chowder.
Well, I mean, you can get like cider donuts. That's the big thing around here in Western Mass.
Yep.
I don't really care about cider.
Yeah, we have a couple of farms in this area that do really good cider donuts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You're over here, then it's like you got clams and mussels if you're into that type of thing.
Seafood, yeah. I grew up on Long Island where literally it's a mile to the water and there's like seafood right off the boat. I don't like seafood, so.
Yeah. So
like I go to the fish shop and be like, oh, that's the guy who caught the fish. He's unloading it right now. I don't like that. So that's the thing. So I mean, I hope you guys had fun again, and if you ever do want to do something else, or if you want to, explore different things or any games I've done or whatever, I'm happy to do so. I'm always happy to chat about gaming and games, no matter what.
Awesome. No, that's
this
awesome.
was a lot of fun for me, and I was happy to meet all of you, and I was happy to run a game and enjoy a couple Saturdays.
Yeah, no, this is a great time. It was a great time.
No, a ton of fun. Yeah.
Cool. And I hope, when I got involved with, Bodana, one of the things is, they talk about gaming, and I've tried. And it's difficult because people have their preferences, but I've tried to try and get people to try. Like, I look at it and I'm like, if no one's ever gamed before, and I've run a game group here at school, and like kids don't even know how to roll dice. Kids are like, they throw the dice and they end up across the room, and so you're spending minutes like looking for dice. And I feel like a game like D&D, although it's the brand that everyone knows, I don't think it's necessarily the best game to start out gamers with. I mean, like something. And when I thought about it, and it's not that Retrostar is the be-all and end-all of anything, but I think Retrostar is a great game for something like this, because it's so rules light, and you don't have to look up any rules. Like the GM can know the rules, just be like, do this, and then just come up with like what happens. Then you can have a discussion about it. And as we had today, several times where I was like, well, here's some ideas. Oh, cool. I will try this, or I'll try this, or I'll try this, because it's so wide open. It can let you do anything, but you're not bogged down in rules. And there's nothing wrong, D&D, there's nothing wrong with being bogged down with rules. But as an intro, like, do you guys know the game Diplomacy?
I don't know.
I'm familiar with it, but I've never played it.
It's an old board game. I mean, it's old going back like JFK would play. And it's a very elegant game if you have someone there who knows how the game works. The rules aren't super complicated, but there's a lot of moving pieces. And gameplay is relatively easy. But you need someone who knows the rules. And you don't want to be like, hey, I'll read these rules. D&D, I've played lots of games at conventions, and there's different types of game masters, and many of them, I won't say most, I won't say all, many of them, in my opinion, view gaming as sort of a competitive thing, and you're running a game at a convention. My job is to help you enjoy the game. It's to empower you. It's to say, hey, your character can do this if you want to. And they can say, no, I don't want to. Great, that's fine. But often game masters will, they'll hit you with, well, you didn't say you were looking for nanobots. You're like, that's not engaging the players. That's not engaging the characters. The characters grew up in the world. They should know to look for these things. That's my take on things. And as a game master, even with longtime players, it's my job to help the players get there. Do you know what I mean? People have crummy days. Maybe you forgot about something you did. The more complicated the rules are, now you can stack all your things and you can make a sort of a munchkin character, and that's fine. But if you show up and you're like, oh, I'm going to make an elf wizard because I like elves and I like wizards. And, oh, that's not the best build for you. is that player going to have as much fun? Do you know what I mean? Knowing everyone else has a thing here. You know what I mean? You look at, we all played 3rd edition, correct?
Yep.
What's the best build for Melee in 3rd edition? The chain fighter.
Just straight up chain whip fighter, just terrifying.
You are brutal. You're like, I have a 10-foot reach. I can knock you down. When you try and get up, I knock you down again as a free action. And nowhere in fantasy fiction is there a chain fighter. Like,
and I'm dual wielding, so I get like a million attacks around.
Yeah. Like Lord of the Rings has no chain fighters in it. But you came across this build at multiple tables because it was the optimal build. So that sort of pulls me out of the fiction. And, if you're not playing chain fighter guy, you're like, oh, I made a cool fighter with a sword. You're standing there while chain fighter guy is destroying everything. And that's not fun. Everyone wants to shine. They want to be able to do a thing. And if your goal is to be a meek elven wizard, play a game where you can be meek elven wizard and still be awesome. Like, it's fine. And not everyone engages in that way. But I just think a system that lets everyone do a thing. And there were times today where only one of you was doing something, but I looked and other players were smiling, like they were having fun with what was happening. That's what you want. A lot of games, like, oh, my turn's over. I don't care. Come back to me when you get to the next initiative. Like,
just on the phone. It's like, okay.
Yep.
So, I look at games that are as rules light as possible as being like being interesting for therapy. I won't say good, bad, whatever. I'll say interesting for therapy and stuff like that, because it's just about sort of, you roll these 2 dice and that's it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I don't need to know anything else. Nope, you're good. You are as capable of this system as anyone else. And that's a nice thing, because, then, one kid starts power gaming and you're like, ruins the game for everyone.
Yeah. I shut that down. I shut down metagaming. Like, there's never any of that allowed at this table.
Yeah. I too am not a huge fan of metagaming. It's like, Well,
the thing is, some systems you get punished for not doing it. So it's frustrating there, in my opinion, because some systems you're just not going to have as much fun if you don't do it. So I ran a superhero game. My friend, so I wrote a superhero game and I ran a session with my friend who's a big comics fan, and I let him play Superman. And Superman in my game is not more powerful than other characters. All the characters are sort of the same. You know what I mean? They do things and they do it in a different way, and that's fine. And I could tell that, like, he was frustrated because he wasn't the most powerful, character at the table. And I'm like, that's not the way it is in comics. Superman is good at doing what he does. So is Batman. So is Robin. You know what I mean? And Robin certainly in most games doesn't have the same number of points, but Robin wants to be cool. So, I made a game where, like, here's Superman and here's Robin. They're going to go on an adventure together, and Robin is going to be as effective as Superman in a different way. And that's more fun for people where they can all engage. But if your idea is like, no, I want to have a 40 in every stat, and I have all the stats. Okay, whatever. It's not fun for the GM because they're like, well, what do I do? I've got Darkseid, and then I've got a robber like over here, and they're together, so they can each have a challenge. I think that, like, game balance is important in the sense that everyone should equally be able to have fun and engage with the world. So and Retrostar, there's 3 stats, whatever. And as you saw, I was very strict about which one you use. I was like, I use this one or this one. It's fine.
And they're all, like, super fluid and, like, up to interpretation on exactly how you use them too. So it's that I think that is one of the reasons why it's so easy to be able to kind of throw this in any setting.
Yeah, and I mean, if someone and someone could, and as we discussed first time, like, someone can try and game the game and they're like, no, I'm going to use adventure because I've got a tune adventure. I'm going to use that for everything. I'm going to use adventure to talk to someone because I'm so adventurous or whatever. That player doesn't get invited back for a second session. We get to the episode and they are recast.
I mean, I also feel like, as a storyteller or a GM, to kind of, challenge that is like, okay, describe to me how you would like to utilize your adventure stat. So it's like, maybe you want to, it's like, oh, I want to use adventure to, kind of awe the crowd. It's like, how would you do that with adventure? It's like, oh, I could just maybe reminisce about my past adventures. And
absolutely, and that's the elegance of the system is you can say, yeah, I'll allow it. I'm going to give you one obstacle die because it's a little hard. So then you have a choice, like, do you do it or not? So I'm with you there. I'm all open for that idea. But it's if we go back to the Superman thing, Superman's best stat is this. So you're just going to use that every turn,
right?
So So I mean, and as we discussed, like, Retrostar was a long time in creation. But I think the payout is good in the sense that, like, it's a nice, elegant system for doing lots of things. So.
Oh, definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Is that good? Anything else?
I think so. I think that's good.
Good.
Yeah.
Play Retrostar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you. And like I said, get in touch if you guys ever want to do anything else. If not, be well and hopefully
Totally.
you're safe.
All right, man.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you so much.